Outside of all that, I want to say Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We're going to go through this season of our study. We go through our Torah studies, and I get a lot of comments. People, it doesn't matter if I'm at a church. Usually from churches and stuff, they'll say, "Hey, we're interested in Passover." That is just a huge thing. That's what a lot of people will attach to. Passover is a huge thing, and there's so many questions because Passover is not a little thing. If it was like a minute thing, it would be like, okay, yeah, I can answer your questions. But it's so deep, and it's just like, and so I made that comment that one time about it, and I say it a lot. The only recorded Seder meal that there's actually is in Scripture is in the Brit Hadashah, in the New Testament. There's not a recorded Seder meal actually done. It talks about what to do, but it doesn't actually show one. So when people in the churches go, what does it have to do with us? It's like, you guys got the only recorded one in Scripture, man. What are you doing with it? You know, the only one is the Messiah and his disciples and the Gentiles in Corinth and Galatia doing it. I don't know. What does it have to do with you? You know, and it is deep. And that's the reason why a lot of them are stepping out saying, there's something to this. I'm like, there is something to it. I don't know why y'all dropped the ball on it, you know? And I'm not saying y'all, but it's just over time, it's traditions. It's just, we don't want to do this for some apparent reason. I don't know. But they have a lot of questions. People come to me with a lot of questions about Passover. So I thought, well, instead of just trying to do a lesson, I brought that up. I'll do a presentation. Can you do this in an hour? No, I can't. There's so much there. So we're breaking it down into parts. Today we're doing part 2. And if you remember last week, we did part 1. Part 1, we didn't even get into Passover. Not really. We just kind of skimmed the surface a little bit of it. So we're going to kind of start getting into it right now. So part 1 was pretty much like a prerequisite to Passover, Pesach. So we're going to start off going through Passover, and then we're going to have these recorded and have these online. So when people say, hey, I have some questions about it, that's great. I got a few videos. You can watch that so I don't have to, you know, I hate to say I don't want to repeat myself all over the time, but it just makes it to where, hey, there's accessible information for you on that. And I'd like to take time and go through it little steps at a time and explain certain things. And explain things that I always say when I'm talking, like especially when we're at the D home or when we're talking with youth or just talking with people, you don't want to use churchy words. You know, you just don't want to use the churchy words and stuff. And if you do, explain what those are. You know, there's words that people say, when they say, oh, you know, sanctification, there's like, what? People on the street aren't talking about, you know, being sanctified. They're not talking holy. These are words that, you know, people don't usually use, you know. So the point of saying something is communication. And if it's not being communicated, then you're not saying things right, you know. So we have to work on the way it's done. So when I'm doing some of these presentations, it's going to be, let's take a minute and look at something. And a lot of these are Hebrew words. And a lot of people just, we know what the words are, we hear the words, but we don't really know where they come from. So we're going to visit some of that today. So when we think of Passover, the first thing that people think about in modern time is the Passover Seder. That's our little Seder table there we had done up a few years ago. We took a good little picture of it. My daughters, they work putting all this stuff together, and each one cooks certain little things, so we lay them all out on the table. But the first thing that we think about is the Passover Seder. That's what a lot of people will recognize too. Passover's coming up. They know there's going to be a Seder meal. And to understand a Seder meal, to understand the basics of a Seder meal, it's not just a tradition that just people are just doing. To understand the basics of what a Seder meal is, we have to go back to the beginning. And I thought, how would I teach this? We have to go back to the beginning, to creation. So all existence was designed and created with a purpose. And that's why we call God our creator. He is the creator. So in the beginning, God created. He is the creator. And when we look at that, we need to know that we were designed and that we were designed in the image of God. In his characteristics, when they say in the image of God, that's involving his characteristics. That's why there's so many names that they call him, because he has so many characteristics, so many ways of explaining it. And see, we too are creators. We're inventors. And we long for knowledge and understanding, because he is the creator, he is the inventor, and he is all-knowing and all-understanding. And because of that, we are built in that image, and that's why we also do these things. No other creatures on this planet do the things that we do. None of them make music. They make sounds, but they don't make music. They don't build buildings. They don't build monuments. They don't build statues. They don't do that. A bird nest looks the same bird nest for 5,000 years. But our houses will change. That's old. That's last season. That was 6 months ago. I don't know. We're always inventing and growing. We're the only ones that do that because we have an inventor mentality. We have a creating mentality. We are the ones that will work and work and work and work and not rest. And God says, you need to rest. We always want to do and build and create. And then we also go for knowledge and understanding because that's part of our nature. We want to know more than the other people. We gotta soak in the knowledge, and then that gets best of us too, because we'll pride ourselves in our creations, we'll pride ourselves in our inventions, and we'll pride ourselves in our knowledge. Because it's prideful, that's what we do, that's what we're doing. We're like a sponge soaking these up. So I thought about how I were to explain Passover, and I would like to have to start from the beginning, like I said. So let's look at creation, all right? So we look at Bereshit. This is Genesis. And the actual first word of Genesis is Bereshit. Bereshit means in the beginning. And this is Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. That is the first words of your Torah scroll. That's the first words of the Bible. That is the first words of Genesis right there. Bereshit bara, which just basically means in the beginning, created Elohim, God. God created. Et, right here, that is just a direct object. That just means it's pointing to a direct object. And that is Hashamayim, the heavens, and the Va, right there in the brown, the Va, Et. And then it says Aharetz. Aharetz is a word that we know, meaning of the land, of the earth, the world. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He's the creator. We're going to move on to the very next one. And I highlighted these words here, and I want you to pay attention to this. It says, and the earth was unformed and void. The orange there, when it says unformed, that is tohu. Tohu is the Hebrew word there that means unformed. But I want you to see this unformedness that's there in creation. That means formless, confusion, unreality, and an emptiness. So unformed and void, and that is tohu. That's how you pronounce it, tohu. And I want to look at tohu, and I want to see where else do I find tohu in Scripture. What did we see when we're seeing tohu? And I want to look at Isaiah 24, and this is a prophecy. Okay, so Isaiah is a prophet, and it's a prophecy of a future apocalypse and a worldwide destruction that we talk about here. Okay, and one of the things he talks about was a city of chaos in Isaiah 24, and it says. And I pulled this one out of the Complete Jewish Bible. It says, the city of chaos is shattered and every house closed up. No one can enter. I also pulled this from the King James Version because a lot of people like the King Jimmy and they want to bring that one out. And they're like, hey, I got that. And it says the city of confusion. They use the word confusion in the translation there. It's broken down and every house is shut up and no man can enter. So I looked at that, and in Isaiah, that is tohu. That's the same word meaning that of chaos. It's complete destruction. It is chaos. It is unformed. It's just not well put together. And that is tohu. And we look back at that. That is the formless, confusion, unreality, and emptiness, the tohu. Without order, that is without any type of order and confusion. God began creating the universe. He began to put days into sequence. And he put them into an ordered state. And he created order. And there was another verse that I saw, and I was thinking about things. There's a guy, Job, who was really depressed. For good reason, he was depressed, all right? A lot of stuff going on. But he was saying to God, I wish I was never born. I wish you would just send me and kill me and put me into a vast that just is of pre-existence. And his words in there was he wanted to go to a land of gloom like darkness itself, a dense darkness and utter disorder where even the light is dark. I mean, he was depressed, all right? And so the word he uses there, so the blue right there you see, that is velo. Velo, that means and no, because the vav is the and part, but lo means no. That means no. So lo is no. And then the next one is Sadarim. But I highlighted just the yellow part of the Sadarim right there. Sadarim is an actual word which means order, arrangement, and sequence. So he's saying in a place where there is no order, no sequence, there is no arrangement, no sequence. I want to be in a place of that. And he's referring back to a pre-existence. Take me back to a place there was no order. Why was I even born? I don't even want to be born. So I look at this word, velo sadarim, all right? And we're looking at sadar right there. And that is the letters right there, the Samish, the Dalet, and the Resh. We'll be learning those in the Introduction to Hebrew class if you start going through those. But those three letters, and in Hebrew language, the words have what they call root words. And the root words are usually an action type root word. This root word right here is sadur. You add a few letters to that and you have sadur. That is what we have in here. This is a sadur. And that's where we get the word sadur from. A sadur is an order of prayers and blessings in a service. So that is our order of service. It's an order. We have certain prayers and blessings we do in an order. And that's where sadur comes from. Sadur is an actual word that means that. What also sounds like sadur is Seder, who has the exact same words, same letters. It's all in the same order. And the Seder is an order of the Passover meal. It retells the story of Exodus in an orderly fashion. Our God is the creator and an orderly God. He does things in an orderly manner. So when we're explaining a story, we explain it in order. Sadur. Sadur just means order. So when you have a Seder, that's just an order. So you're having a Seder, an order. So when you say we're having a Seder meal, all you're saying is we're having an orderly meal. We're having something in a sequence. We have something that is going to help teach a story in a purposeful way. That's what Seder means. So when people say it's a Seder, yes, it is an orderly service. And that's what we're doing to help teach to the next generation. Because when you're getting a lesson together, you want to get it all together, and you want to get it orderly so you can communicate things right. And that's why the traditions came in, where you just go, let's put things in order. Let's do these in an orderly form. And why do we want to keep doing those types in an orderly form? Because we have the same characteristics as our God. Because God is the God of creation. He's the God of order, and he does things, and he tries to explain things in order. And then we take that order and we say, let's orderly communicate this on. So Seder, Sadur, is just a type of order. All right. So we'll look at 1 Corinthians chapter 14, and this is out of the CJB. For God is not a God of unruliness, but of shalom. Of not unruliness, but of shalom. And then the Tree of Life version says, for God is not a God of confusion, but of shalom. So I want you to think about this. God has a design, a plan, and an order. The world, which opposes God and his design, is why we have a society that goes against his order. Order that God laid out, the family, marriage, husband and wife, parents and children, male and female. There's an order and a plan and a design. There's a godly order and there's a worldly disorder. So God is a God of not of unruliness or confusion, which is a disorder. So let's look at the Passover, how it first started out. So we're going to look at Exodus chapter 1. We're going to start right there. This is the basics, because a lot of people don't understand sometimes the story of it. I'm not going to go too far into the story, but we're going to set off how this got started, how this got put into play. So Joseph died, that's Joseph, as did all of his brothers and all that generation. The descendants of Israel were fruitful, increased abundantly, multiplied, and grew very powerful. The land became filled with them. It goes on to say, now there arose a new king over Egypt. He knew nothing about Joseph, but said to his people, look, the descendants of Israel have become a people of too numerous and powerful for us. Come, let us use our wisdom in dealing with them. Otherwise, they'll continue to multiply and eat, and in the event of war, they might ally themselves with the enemy, fight against us, and leave the land altogether. And it says, so they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built for Pharaoh the storage cities of Pitmon and Ramesses. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more they multiplied and expanded, until the Egyptians came to dread the people of Israel and worked them relentlessly, making their lives bitter and with hard labor. For a future lesson, just remember that word bitter. There was a bitterness of slavery. All right, it's not going to be on this lesson, but put in your pocket for later. They were digging clay, making bricks, and all kinds of field work. And in all this toil, they were shown no mercy. All right, so now you have so many slaves, and they're just working for Egypt, and they're crying out to God. They say all this stuff's going on, saying we need to be saved from this stuff. Then there was, Moses. He was born, and then he was put in a river, floated down. He was raised. That's part of the story. I'm going to kind of skip over some of that to go to the next parts. But sometime during those many years, the king of Egypt died. And this is after Moses had already left. He'd already came back, or not came back, but he left. He's out in the desert. And during those many years, the king of Egypt died. But the people of Israel still groaned under the yoke of slavery. And they cried out, and they cried for rescue from slavery came upon to God. God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Isaac. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. God saw the people of Israel, and God acknowledged them. Now, when it says that he remembered them, it wasn't that he forgot. He's just acknowledging. He's saying, I do remember. Adonai said, I have seen how my people are being oppressed in Egypt, and heard their cry for release from their slave masters, because I know their pain. I have come down to rescue them from the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that country to good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And then he goes on to say, yes, the cry of the people of Israel have come to me, and I have seen how terrible the Egyptians oppressed them. Therefore now come, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you can lead my people and the descendants out of Egypt. And that's what he's talking to Moses. He goes on to say later, I'm going to back up on this one. So he says, I'm going to send you. Then he goes and he talks to the people. And Moses is going to go and make his plea to Israelites living in Egypt in slavery. And he says, therefore, saying to the people of Israel, God says to tell him, he says, I am Adonai. I will free you from the forced labor of the Egyptians, rescue you from their oppression, and redeem you with an outstretched arm and great judgments. I will take you as my people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am Adonai your God, who freed you from the forced labor of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and I will give it to you as an inheritance. I am Adonai. And I spoke to Moshe and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, and he said, you are to begin your calendar with this month. Now this is after they had already left. They had already left. I'm not going through the plagues and everything right now. That's going to be on another lesson. Like I said, I'm just giving you a basics of this. So they're left, and he says, you will begin the calendar with this month. It will be the first month of the year for you. Speak to the assembly of Israel and say, on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb or a kid of his family. Now this is before they left. This is right at the last. I'm skipping the big plagues and the fights and the stuff going on with it, but we're looking at what's starting the Passover part to it here. And where do we get that word Passover? It says that each man is to take a lamb or a kid. A kid is a baby goat. That's one of the things that I try to get away from calling kids. And they're children, and I want to call them something like that. I would call them a lamb, but not a kid. So I'm working on it, all right? So the lamb or the kid for his family, one per household, except that if the household is too small for a whole lamb or kid, then he and his next door neighbor should share one, divided in proportions to the number of people eating it. Your animal must be without defect, a male in its first year, and you may choose it from either the sheep or the goats. Here's where it gets good. It says, you are to keep it until the 14th day of the month, and then the entire assembly of the community of Israel will slaughter it at dusk. They are to take some of the blood and smear it on the two sides and the top of the door frame at the entrance of the house in which they eat it. So they put the blood on the doorpost. That night they are to eat the meat, roasted in the fire, and they are to eat it with matzah and maror. Maror is a bitter herb. It's a bitter herb, and we're going to talk about that in another lesson. But just be familiar with the word maror. It says, here is how you are to eat it, with your belt fastened, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you are to eat it hurriedly. It is Adonai's Pesach, which is the Hebrew word for Passover. For that night I will pass through the land of Egypt and kill all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both men and animals. and I will execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt. And you see that's a little lowercase g. I am Adonai. The blood will serve you as a sign. I'm going to repeat this. The blood will serve you as a sign marking the house where you are. It is a sign. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. When I strike the land of Egypt, the death blow will not strike you. This is a prophetic outline of the redemption for the future. He will come fast, and if he sees the blood which covers you, his wrath will pass over you and strike the world. The death blow will not strike you. That is the message here. He says you have to remember this and celebrate this because there's something important here that you will know for the future. When God says, I need you to remember this because the future you and your generations will need to know something about what has been practiced for years after years. So it goes on to the very next verse in chapter 14, and it gets really serious here. This will be a day for you to remember and celebrate as a festival to Adonai until Jesus comes, and then you can stop. That's the new age version. So until Jesus comes, then you can just stop doing it. That's not what it says. It says this will be a day for you to remember and celebrate as a festival of Adonai. From generation to generation, you are to celebrate it by perpetual regulation. And when people say, man, we don't have to do this, like, you don't have to do anything, really. I mean, we have to. Do you not want to? I don't know. I'd like to inform my kids about a future redemption and some future stuff that's going to happen, so that way they can pass it on to their kids. So they'll be in the know of what's going to happen. So if anyone is supposed to keep it going, it would probably be the ones who follow Jesus, because he's the one that did it with his disciples, and he trains his disciples to keep doing it. And he shared some more insight on that as it goes. In Exodus chapter 12, verse 15, it says, for 7 days you are to eat matzah. On the first day, remove the leaven from your house. So we want to look at this. People will say, I don't know how to do a Seder. I don't know anything about it. It's just too complicated. I've seen videos, and they're up 5 hours of the night. They're singing. They're waking little kids up, and it's like, oh, we have to do the Seder. And it's long, and that's the way it goes. Sometimes when you go to some of the Seders, they last all day, all night. I mean, they're fun, festive events. I get that. And then some people say, well, I don't know how to start that with my family. That's just too much. I don't know Hebrew. I don't know this and this and this. And there's like, well, there's just some basic things that were just talked about that said to do this, and you can do it. And it's basically just how to remember and how to honor that day. So here's some basic requirements to celebrate. Celebrate on the anniversary of the day. It's the full moon of the first month. That's not January. We did a thing on how to tell time. It's on the series of how to tell time. It's not January. It's April, May-ish, kind of March, April, around the calendar, the Gregorian calendar. But you find that in Exodus chapter 12:6, Leviticus 23:5, and Psalms 81:3. Clean out the hametz, that's the leaven. That should be a time of preparation in your heart and mind. That's Exodus chapter 12, verse 15. Take that time. We talked about that. That was the part one, talking about take that time and understand that all the leaven that you can find in the crevices of your house, that stuff gets stuck in your pantries and everything. When you have the kids, when it's a kids thing, you teach them, clean it out. And they say, oh, it's everywhere. You get the crumbs. You see a crumb right there? And they, yeah. I say, sin does the same thing. It hides in little crevices. You can grab the big loaf of bread out. That's easy. Oh, yeah, that was easy. But there's some sin that you overlook every day and that you won't notice it until somebody comes along and says, hey, you missed a spot. And you go, oh, man, hey, thank you. Let me get that cleaned up. So it is a time to enter into Passover and saying, hey, I'm cleaning out the bread, but I'm actually having to go the inside the heart. I have to clean out that heart and say, I need to prepare this differently. I need to go into this festival of preparation. And this talks about eating matzah and eat the bitter herbs. That's the maror. Remember by retelling the story. To retell it. That's kind of the big thing, is to say, remember this day. How do you remember it? Talk about it. And then we have the cups of juice and wine. That was a later tradition, but even Yeshua did this tradition. So a lot of times people say, well, you know, some are the traditions and things. Yeshua vetted that tradition. He says, no, these are teaching tools. The whole part of the Seder is an orderly service to help teach. So before we move on, some will say, but Scott, I don't have to do this. And there's people that say that. I don't have to do this. And I was like, right. But see, that's the beauty of it. You don't have to. And you can do whatever you want to do. But then I think about it. I say, Peter could have just lived his life as a regular old fisherman. And Jesus said, Peter, follow me. He could have said, I don't have to do this. And Jesus would have said, you're absolutely correct. Sorry to bother you. Enjoy your day fishing. So Jesus, he would have went and got somebody else to do it. But something to think about, and this isn't biblical, this is just me thinking outside the box, this is where my mind goes. But what if Jesus asked somebody before Peter, and they said no, and maybe Peter was the one that just said yes? So if you think of it that way, be humble and be thankful for the opportunity that God is giving you to partake in doing things that He's asking you to do. Because you might just be the person that said yes after 20 people said no. So let's look back at Exodus chapter 12, verse 14 real quick. It says, this will be a day for you to remember and celebrate as a festival to Adonai. From generation to generation, you are to celebrate it as a perpetual regulation. To remember what we have, what it is, you have to tell it. You have to retell this, to pass this on to the next generation. That is the purpose of remembering. That's how you remember. It's almost like the World War II vets. When they were talking and they said, hey, let me tell you some stories. And a lot of times they didn't want to tell you stories, but whenever somebody did tell you a story, you wanted to hear it because they didn't really want to talk about it a lot. But when they told you something, it was very important stuff to tell you. You sit down, you listen, and you go, okay, now we can remember what happened in World War II. It's like that's how it goes. We can almost experience by them telling it. And that's kind of what it is. So we're going to look at the word Haggadah. This means telling or narration. That is the word Haggadah. People say, I have a Haggadah for our Seder meal. And it's a little booklet, and they get out the Haggadah. What is Haggadah? Haggadah is just the word that just means telling or a narration. It's the telling. That's the word for Haggadah. Now, just kind of break up the monotony a little bit. I actually got tongue-tied, and you know I do that. I can't even say some words, even in English. But I was driving down the road, and I was talking to my wife. I was like, yeah, I gotta work on the Haggadahs for the Passover Seder. And I got hung up on Haggadah, and I said Haagen-Dazs, and I was like the ice cream, and I was like, man, Haagen-Dazs. And then it just got me thinking. My brain went squirreled over in Haagen-Dazs. I was like, that is weird. Like, what is Haagen-Dazs? Like, what does that word even mean? And come to find out, that doesn't even mean anything. It's not even a word that means anything. It's actually just they wanted it to sound very fancy, and they pulled some languages from different cultures. But I found out that Haagen-Dazs is an American ice cream brand founded in 1960 in the Bronx, New York, by a Polish-Jewish immigrants, Reuben and Rose. And the name was created to pay tribute to Denmark as the only country that was saving its Jewish population during World War II, and to evoke a scene of high-quality European, particularly Scandinavian dairy. Pillsbury bought them out, and then Nestle bought it out, so it's Nestle-owned. Totally off the subject, but my mind went there, and I thought, that's actually a cool history. I just take this is like the little the break in between the game. Yeah, this is it. So just throwing it out there. You get to learn a little bit of ice cream there. Just that was free. There's no charge on that one whatsoever. But when we look at a Haggadah, not a Haagen-Dazs, but a Haggadah, that is the book that we read out of at the Seder, and it's called the Haggadah. All right. So basically, it's a Siddur, but it's a Haggadah. It's how to tell the story. That's basically what it's saying is like, here's a book, and here's how to tell the story using items and stories and songs. So it's basically just a retelling of how to do it. And they say, well, which one's the right Haggadah? It's like, there's many Haggadahs. It's just, how do you want to retell the story? And you can take the traditions, and you can take the things. You can create some own traditions. I'm really big on, like, if your family is doing this for generation after generation, you are going to pick up a tradition. Somebody's going to do something silly at Seder, and then they're going to be like, oh, that was funny. And they were like, I remember when so-and-so did that. And then they start doing it, and then it becomes a tradition. Everybody's doing something silly. Somebody comes over to your house for a Passover, and they're like, what are y'all doing? It's like, oh, we've been doing it for a long time. That's how traditions are made. But it's something for memory, and I encourage that. I encourage, make it a family thing. Make it personal. Do that. So it is an ordered service like a Seder. A Seder is an ordered service. So it is of the ordered service, Seder, which commemorates by retelling, that is Haggadah, So the Exodus story. So a Haggadah is just the retelling. So a Seder has a Haggadah because the Seder is just an ordered service. The Haggadah is how to tell the story. It's just the retelling. All right. So when we think of a Seder, there's certain things traditionally that we think about that pop up a lot. And one is a Seder plate. So the Seder means an order. So this is an orderly plate. It has little places in a specific order to Haggadah to help tell the story. So you can do it with smell and sight and taste, and that helps it out. I mean, you're going, but that sounds like you're teaching little children. Exactly. And you have to have a heart of a child to understand some of this. So come with that heart. Come with that humbleness. So during a Seder meal, we usually things that are traditions and assist in telling the story. The Seder plate's one of them. And then there's these 4 cups of juice and wine that are tradition, a tradition that even Jesus kept. So these are the 4 cups. These 4 cups actually represent, and there's 4 different sections of the Seder. So each section of the Haggadah, if you open up a Haggadah, the retelling, it'll have 4 different sections. Each section is represented with a cup. And each section represents 4 promises that God made to Israel, that he had Moses tell them. And if we look back at that, this is what it said. Therefore say to Bnei Israel, I am Adonai. I will bring you out. That's the first promise. I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will deliver you from their bondage, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. I will take you to myself as a people, and I will be your God, and you will know that I am Adonai your God, who brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. These were the 4 promises that God promised them. So they take the 4 promises and they break the 4 promises down. And they talk about the 4 different promises through a Seder meal. That is the order that we do it. And then we go through the Haggadah. And the Haggadah just helps us tell each section of the story. It's very orderly. It's very orderly. And if you look at it from that big bird's eye view, it's not that hard to do a Seder. And you can have a very simple one that can go for about 30 minutes at your house, 10, 15 minutes if you rush through and talk fast like me. Or if you just want to party all night, there you go, have at it. So it's up to you. You can kind of tweak it up how you want. But on that very first promise, there is always a cup represented to each one of these promises. Okay? So the first one that we're going to look at is called the cup of sanctification. All right, that's the first cup. Now the first cup that is done is the cup of sanctification, but it also has another name. So the first cup, the first to fourth cup, is also known as the Kiddush cup. Now, Kiddush means holy or separate. Holy or separate. So Kiddush, all right? So if you have a Friday night Shabbat meal, usually there's a Kiddush cup, and there's a blessing over the Kiddush cup. So we have blessings over the Kiddush cup. Kiddush symbolizes sanctification, because to be separate, you have to separate, and you're growing away from something and growing towards something else. That's the part of sanctification. And through the process, people say, well, there's salvation, and then you're just waiting to go to heaven. Salvation, glorification. No. Salvation, sanctification, glorification. This is the process of going away from the world and drawing closer to God. All right? It says sanctification. And we are to remember of this when Adonai said, I will bring you out. I will separate you. I am calling you out. A feeling of being set free. To be set apart as holy unto Hashem, this is being sanctified. Sanctification, the cup, the Kiddush cup. The Kiddush cup is used a lot, not just during Passover, but the Friday nights for Shabbat dinners. It's a symbol of setting someone apart or something apart for God, meaning holiness. God is not better than us on a scale. He is something completely different than us. You have to understand what holiness means. People do not understand it. They go, holy just means that he's really good. God's better than us. He's greater than us. Your holiness is really good. You're holy. He's acting holy. No. Holy doesn't mean really good. Holy is something different than us. God is holy. Okay? He's not good. He's holy. All right? And people can't wrap their brains around that. And we're going to try to help you kind of understand that a little bit. He is not good. He is holy. And many people today do not know the difference between good and holy. I have so many people that come and they say, oh, you know what the good book says? You've heard that. This is not the good book. This is not a good book. This is not a really good book. This is a holy book. Holy. That's why they call it the Holy Bible. Not the good Bible. It's the Holy Bible. All right? So I'm going to give you some examples. And this is one example that God used when we went back to the beginning of creation. God said, let there be light. And the light, God saw the light and it was good. That's tov. That's the Hebrew word for tov. It means good. He divided the light from the darkness. God called the dry land earth. He gathered together all the water in the seas, and God saw that it was tov. It was good. Then he brought forth grass. But then he saw that was good. It was tov. It was good. Then he goes on, he says, God made the two great lights. And he saw that, the sun, the moon, and the stars. He says, those were good. It was tov. And then he created the sea creatures and every living thing that creeps and all the things in the water and all the birds. And he said, that is tov. That is good. And then he made the wild beasts on the land. And he said, that was tov, and that was good. Then he goes on to here, and then he says that everything was tov miod, which means very good, because he made man. As soon as he made man, he goes, now it is very good. Tov miod. But then the heavens and the earth were finished, along with everything in them. On the seventh day, God was finished with his work, and he made. So he rested on the seventh day from all the work which he had made. God blessed the seventh day, and he separated it. Separated it from any other day, and he said, that is Kiddush. That is holy. It is not good. It is not very good. It is holy. It is something set apart for God. All right? So that is Kiddush. Now, holy is a very popular word in religious circles. Any religious circle that you're involved, Islamic, Muslim, you're Jewish, Buddhist, Christian, I mean, even atheists probably have something that's holy. I don't know. But holy is mentioned, okay? But out of all the cool things that happened in Genesis, think about it. There was the flood, the tower, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph, the covenants. Out of all that happened in Genesis, and there's a really cool number here that I want you to learn. How many times was holy mentioned in Genesis? Out of all those things, think about all those things. Take a good number guess. There's a cool number that's there. 1. Kiddush is only mentioned one time in the book of Genesis. And you're looking at that verse. It's the only time you're going to see holy in the book of Genesis. So holy is not good. Holy is not very good. It is not even very, very good. Holy is something different. You won't be in glory with God by being good or very good. It says that the only way that you'll be in glory with God is that that's for holy only. It's holiness only. And so when you say, well, Scott, do you think you're holy? No, not at all. Not in my own flesh. But I do know somebody that's holy. And we talked about that last week. In 1 Corinthians, talk about your boasting is not good. Don't you know the saying that it takes only a little hummus to leaven a whole batch of dough? Get rid of the old hummus so that you can be a new batch of dough, because in reality you are unleavened. For our Pesach, our Passover lamb, the Messiah, has been sacrificed. So let us celebrate this Seder. Let us celebrate this Passover. This is Brit Hadashah, this is New Testament. Not with the leftover hummus, the hummus of the wickedness and evil, but the matzah of purity and truth. It goes on to Revelations. And the Tree of Life version is really beautiful when it says, they were chanting with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing. Holy is the Lamb who was slain. And that's the one I know. So when that blood is covered on me, I stand there and the wrath will pass over. Simple. Simple. It's not complicated. And I want to look at one more thing. This is the Kiddush cup. This is the blessing at the end. actually it's the beginning, end of our service, but the beginning of a Passover Seder. We'll lift up the Kiddush cup, and then there's a blessing for it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Actually, we'll sing it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. And then you sing the blessing and you drink from the cup, and it says, "Blessed are you, Adonai our God, King of the universe, who creates fruit of the vine." Simple prayer, simple blessing. A lot in a little bit, just like our psalm reading was. It's a lot in just a little bit. Thank you for this. And when you sing that and you say, "Thank you for the fruit of the vine," we'll talk about some of the grape juice of what that represents later on. And then it says everyone will drink and recline to the left. We're going to talk about that in another lesson too. It's so depth. So to symbolize making Passover different, we had to go back to the beginning. And the cup of the sanctification, the Kiddush cup, that's the holy cup, and that's the blessings. And we will talk about reclining in another lesson. But now you see where some of these words come from. You see where some of the meanings from. So now you can enter it saying, I know what these words mean. Things are coming together. It's an orderly fashion. And it's actually very simple. It's nothing complicated. Don't overthink it. So with that, we'll go ahead and close in some prayers and some blessings and sing and some songs. And I don't know, just I kind of thinking about, and I want to touch on this just a little bit before we get into it. Pay attention to the detail through Passover. Pay attention to the detail through your Seders, the explanations, the little details. God is in the details. They always say, oh, the devil's in the details. No, God is really in those minute details. So when there's something that's like, oh, here's matzah, we're breaking the matzah, we're hiding the matzah, we're finding the matzah, we're singing a blessing, here's the bitter herbs, here's this, here we're leaning. Why would we recline? I don't know. There's so much detail, but all the details are there to teach us a lesson, and it's in the Seder, in the order, and it's through a retelling and a Haggadah. So let's go ahead and let's stand for the closing and blessings. I'll go ahead and pray for us real quick. God, we just want to say thank you very, very, very much for this day, this holy day, the Shabbat, the Kiddush, separated holy. I pray that we go through this process of sanctification, that we are drawing closer to you. As we enter into Passover, it'll be a month and a half away, but preparing ourselves and understanding what this is about. I pray that this year is different, and I pray that the year after that will be even different, that we just see ourselves growing in this direction. Thank you for this family here. Thank you for everybody here. And it's in Yeshua's name we pray. Amen. All right. We'll go ahead and close out. I think it's page 8 of Nehemiah. Well, I'm all tangled up over here. All right. And it is said, the Lord shall be king over all the world. And on that day, the Lord will be one, and his name, one. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lamelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yihei Adonai echad hu shemo echad. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai make his face shine on you and show you his favor. May Adonai look upon you and give you peace. Yevarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yor Adonai pano v'lecha v'hunecha. Esa Adonai pano v'lecha v'yasem leho. Shalom. Shabbat shalom, guys.